My name is Orryn-Vel. I am what your kind would call an observer, a watcher, a professional mind-your-own-business specialist, stationed at Relay Post 17 on the edge of what you humans call Tuesday. My job, officially, is to monitor dimensional frequency signals. Unofficially, my job is to drink cold graviton brew, file reports nobody reads, and pretend I do not notice the war that has been happening for 300 your Earth years right underneath your sleeping, blissfully clueless noses. You humans are remarkable, truly, not in the way your movies suggest, where one of you grabs a rifle and saves the galaxy with a speech about freedom. No, you are remarkable because you are possibly the only species in 47 observed universes who built an entire civilization directly on top of a battlefield and called it home. You painted it, put cafes on it, argued about parking, and went completely about your day. Extraordinary. Let me explain, and I will try to be patient, because patience is something I've had a lot of practice with, watching your species attempt to assemble flat-pack furniture. There are two of you, two Earths, two versions of your world occupying the same spatial coordinates, separated by nothing more than a vibrational frequency. The way two radio stations can exist in the same air without the music touching. One Earth is yours, the one you are on right now. The other, we call Earth Sado, the shadow version, the one that kept evolving after the original split point approximately 312 years ago. Give or take a few of your Thursday afternoons. Earth Sado is not evil. This is important. I want to be clear. They are not villains with capes and dramatic lighting. They are simply, how do I say this gently, winning, and they would very much prefer to keep it that way. The split happened, as most catastrophic things do, over something absurdly small. A calculation. One physicist on your Earth, a man named Devakis, made a rounding error in 1712. One tiny, insignificant rounding error that sent your quantum energy grid spiraling in a direction that, from where we observers stand, looked like a sneeze redirecting a comet. On Earth Sado, Devakis did not make that error. He got it right. And from that single correct answer, 3 centuries of technological advantage bloomed like a particularly aggressive weed. Earth Sado discovered dimensional layering. In 1887, your Earth is still arguing about it in comment sections. So here's the war. It is not fought with weapons, at least not the kind you would recognize. No explosions. No burning ships in orbit. Nothing cinematic at all, which I find deeply unfair given the stakes. The war is fought with influence. Earth Sado sends agents through frequency gaps. Thin moments where the vibrational barrier between your two worlds drops just low enough for a person to squeeze through sideways, metaphorically speaking. These agents do not arrive with guns. They arrive with ideas. A small whisper in a scientist's ear. A misfiled document. A funding opportunity quietly redirected. A promising researcher who suddenly, inexplicably, decides to take up beekeeping instead of finishing their particle resonance thesis. Your kind never notices, because the agents look exactly like you, walk like you, breathe like you. They blink wrong, actually, if you know what to look for. Earth Sado humans blink at a rate 0.3 milliseconds slower than baseline, a tiny adaptation from living under slightly different atmospheric pressure. To your eyes, it looks like nothing. To my instruments, it lights up like a beacon. I have been counting them for 11 of your years. There are currently 416 Earth Sado agents living among you right now. Some of them are quite famous. I will not say names, partly for protocol reasons. Mostly because watching you try to figure out yourselves has become the only entertainment I have left at this posting. Now, here is where the story becomes interesting, because for 300 years, Earth Sado has been playing this game unopposed, nudging, suppressing, keeping your world exactly 40 to 60 years behind theirs in every field that matters: energy, medicine, dimensional theory, material science. It is not malicious in the way a villain is malicious. It is strategic in the way a chess player removes pieces, quietly, methodically, without drama. They are very good at it. What they did not account for, what none of you has accounted for, is a woman named Tova Mrann. Tova Mrann is 31 years old. She works at a small, criminally underfunded research station in a city your maps label as unremarkable. She has a coffee mug that says, "I survived peer review," and she sleeps approximately 4 hours a night, and she has completely by accident discovered the frequency gap, not the theory of it, not a paper suggesting it might exist. She has found the actual gap, measured it, mapped 3 of its opening points, and she has absolutely no idea what she is looking at. She thinks she found a weather anomaly. My report is due in 6 hours. For the first time in 11 years, I am not sure what to write in it, because the Earth-Sato agents know she found it. I watched 2 of them alter their walking route last Thursday to pass her building, and one of them, the one stationed near her university, has already made contact. He brought her coffee. She accepted it. I pressed my face against my instruments and made a sound that my species makes when something has gone extremely, beautifully, terrifyingly wrong. It is a sound very much like laughter, but not the comfortable kind. The agent's name, the one who brought Tova Mrann coffee, is Sev Calloran. On your Earth's records, he exists as a visiting research fellow from a university that technically exists, technically as a website, and technically employs people whose job is to answer phone calls and confirm his identity without ever having met him. Earth-Sato is very thorough. I will give them that. Sev Calloran is good at his job. In 7 years of active placement on your Earth, he is quietly redirected for major research threads, caused 2 promising grants to evaporate into administrative review, and once convinced an entire symposium of physicists that a particular line of quantum frequency research was, quote, a dead end with the smell of old funding. He said it at dinner. Everyone laughed. The research died within a year. The man has a gift, what Sev Calloran is not good at, and this is the part that made me spill my graviton brew across 3 separate instrument panels, is talking to Tova Mrann. She asked him 11 questions before he finished sitting down. Not polite questions. Not the social filler kind your species uses to avoid silence. Real questions. Sharp ones. The kind that come from someone who has been staring at the same anomalous data for 6 months and has run out of patience for the universe keeping secrets. She asked about atmospheric pressure differentials in closed measurement environments. She asked about the bleed rate of exotic frequency signatures in sub-Kelvin conditions. She asked, and I want you to understand that at this point I was gripping my console with all 4 of my upper limbs, whether he had ever observed a localized vibrational discontinuity that seemed to repeat on a non-random cycle. Sev Calloran, professional reality manipulator, agent of 300 years of coordinated dimensional suppression, said, "That is an interesting framing." He bought himself 4 seconds. Tova wrote something in her notebook. I filed an emergency observation flag for the first time in my career. My supervisor, a magnificently uninterested bureaucrat named Dan, responded 6 hours later with a message that said, "Noted, continue monitoring." Dan has sent that exact message to every flag I have ever filed. I believe it is automated. I continued monitoring. It was not optional at this point. I was physically incapable of looking away. Here is what happened over the next 9 days, and I will try to summarize without the kind of detail that would fill 17 of your standard novels. Sev Calloran did not do his job. This is the extraordinary part. He sat across from Tova Mrann every afternoon in that criminally underfunded research station, surrounded by her hand-labeled equipment and her 17 competing whiteboards, and he listened to her talk. And she talked, because Tova Mrann is the kind of person who has been talking to instruments and empty rooms for so long that an actual human audience produces the effect of a dam releasing water. She talked about her data. She talked about the cycles. She drew diagrams with such speed that the markers squeaked in protest. She built the case of the frequency gap from scratch, out loud, right in front of the one person on your Earth most specifically tasked with making sure she never finished building it. On day 4, Sev Calloran started asking his own questions, not deflecting ones. Real ones. The kind of person asks when they have forgotten they are supposed to be shutting something down. On day 7, he corrected one of her calculations without thinking. The correction was right. Tova stared at it for 40 seconds, which is a long time to stare at a whiteboard, and then she said very quietly, "How did you know that approach?" Not a question. She said it without the upward inflection. She is the kind of person who drops the question mark when she already knows the answer is not going to be comfortable. Sev Calloran told her he had seen similar work in a paper. He named the paper. It does not exist on your Earth. He realized this approximately 1 second after saying it. I watched him realize it on my instruments. A tiny biosignature spike, the physical equivalent of the words, "I have made a significant error." Tova opened her laptop. She searched for the paper. She did not find it. She looked at Sev Calloran with the expression of someone who has just watched a magician forget to hide the wire and said, "Sit down. Do not touch anything. I have questions." He already was sitting down, but the instruction landed correctly. What followed was 2 hours that I will file in my personal records under the heading, "The First Honest Conversation Between Worlds." Sev Calloran, for reasons that my instruments can measure but my species has no clean word for, told her, not everything, not the full 3 centuries of coordinated suppression and the 416 agents and the political architecture of Earth-Sato's dominant strategy, but enough. He told her the frequency gap was real. He told her she had measured it correctly. He told her that people from the other side knew she had found it. Tova Mrann's response, and I recorded this in full because I intend to include it in my report regardless of what Orryn-Vel's automated reply says, was to close her notebook, put the cap back on her marker, and say, "Good. Then they already know what comes next is not an accident." She walked to whiteboard number 11, the one in the back corner she had not touched in 3 weeks, and she uncapped a fresh marker. What she wrote in the next 40 minutes was not a theory. It was a door, a working, measurable, reproducible method for widening the frequency gap on a controlled basis. Not enough for physical passage, but enough for signal exchange. Enough to talk. Enough for your Earth to stop receiving one-way influence and start transmitting back. Sev Calloran sat very still and watched her build it. He did not stop her. When she finished and turned around, he said, with what my instruments registered as genuine and unscripted feeling, "They are going to send someone better than me." Tova looked at her whiteboard. She looked at him. She said, "So will we." I filed a second emergency observation flag, then a third. Then I did something I have not done once in 11 years at this posting. I picked up the direct line communicator, the one that bypasses Orryn-Vel and his magnificent automated indifference entirely, and I called the senior counsel. They answered on the second signal. This told me they had already been watching. "Orryn-Vel," said the voice of Counselor Pretchem, who is very old and very calm and has the energy of someone who has seen a great many things go sideways and found it mostly instructive. "We see your flags." "Then you see her," I said. "Yes," said Pretchem. "What is the protocol?" I asked. "When the suppressed party figures out themselves and builds a response mechanism in 40 minutes on a whiteboard in a room with bad lighting and a squeaky marker." There was a pause, a long one, from a very old and very calm person who had seen a great many things. "There is no protocol for that," said Pretchem. "I suspected," I said. "Stay on post," said Pretchem. "And Orryn-Vel, do not interfere." The line closed. On your Earth, in a small research station in an unremarkable city, Tova Mrann was already photographing the whiteboard. Sev Calloran was helping her label files. Outside the building, 3 Earth-Sato agents who had been watching the windows since day 7 stood very still in the early evening air, blinking 0.3 milliseconds too slow, and doing nothing at all, because Tova had already sent the files to 6 colleagues in a server backup and an encrypted address that Sev Calloran had quietly given her 40 minutes ago, an address that resolves, if you follow the routing correctly, to a frequency node that sits exactly halfway between your world and the other one. The war that was never a war. The 300-year, one-sided, polite, coffee-bringing, grand-evaporating, invisible war paused. For the first time since a man named Prel Devakis carried the wrong number forward into history, both Earths were paying attention to the same point in space. The frequency gap held open for 11 seconds. Long enough for a signal to cross. Long enough for both sides to hear the same thing. A whiteboard photograph. 40 minutes of work. One woman who never stopped asking questions, even when the universe refused to answer. I leaned back in my chair at Relay Post 17, on the edge of what your kind calls Tuesday, and I did something I had not done since my first year at this posting. I wrote, in my official observation log, in the field marked outcome, a word I was never trained to use in a report because it belongs to the category of things that are felt rather than measured. The word was hope. Then I made fresh graviton brew, and I watched both Earths hold their breath.